Hey, it's Pete Gustis here. Welcome to Small Business Resource Center. This video is entitled How to Get Government Contracts. So like, subscribe if you're looking for this type of information, and I hope you can use the info. I do want to mention that I did miss the first couple minutes of this because, like an entrepreneur, I was busy and lost track of time. But there's a lot of information here, and they also have emails and places where you can get more info. So watch the video, comment if you have questions, and enjoy. Good luck getting government contracts.
Each of those. And the purpose of that is to help small businesses level the playing field and let them compete for business contracts. Next slide. Okay, are you a small business? Are you a small disadvantaged business? Again, these are right on the SBA.gov website under contracting, the contracting tab, and you'll be able to see all these different programs. Again, right on the SBA.gov website. Are you just a small disadvantaged business? Are you a women-owned small business? Are you a veteran-owned small business? Well, they all have different programs available to them. Next slide. Okay, here's three more. The 8A Business Development Program. That's a business program or certification for firm owners who are socially and economically disadvantaged. And I will go into more detail in the future slides. The SBA also has a mentor protege program where small businesses can partner with a large business to do small business contracting. But for that large business to be eligible for small business contracts, they have to, one, partner with the small business, and two, get approved for a mentor protege relationship. And then finally, joint ventures. This is another way for two or more businesses to team together to form a joint venture so they could compete, where collectively they have the capabilities and capacity to do government work, whereas an individual company, small business, they wouldn't have that capacity to compete for that projects. Next slide. Okay. Again, here are three more programs. 7J Management and Technical Assistance Program. It's basically an online training program.
If we're having some
Okay. All right, we're going back. Again, this is the 7J Management and Technical Assistance Program. This is where, as a small business, you can get training at no cost. And you sign up for it online through the SBA.gov website. HUBZone program, it's another one of the certifications. Stands for Historically Underutilized Business Zone. And we'll cover more details about that in future slides. And then Natural Resource Sales Assistance Program. This is where you're able to register to buy surplus property at a discounted rate from the federal government. That's another program available to small businesses. Next slide. Okay, remember how in the beginning I talked about eligibility? And if you're other than manufacturing or distribution, it's based on your annual revenue to determine whether you're a small business. And that annual revenue is based on your NAICS codes. So again, Google NAICS codes, and you can find out what those NAICS codes are and which NAICS codes apply to your business. And that's how you determine whether you're a small business. The numbers are actually pretty large. For example, if you're an electrical contractor, you're allowed to be $16.5 million per year, averaged over a 5-year period. If you're general construction, you're a GC, general contractor, the small business size standard is $45.5 million per year, averaged over a 5-year period. So there's some pretty big dollars. It's not that hard to be qualified as a small business. Next slide. Okay, we're going to start now talking about the 8A program, Business Development and Contracting Assistance Programs. Again, the 8A program is for firms that are economically and socially disadvantaged. The second one that we'll talk about is the HUBZone program, Historically Underutilized Business Zone. And that's based on geography. And of course, you still have to be a small business. But if your business is located primarily in a hub zone, then you can apply for that program. Hub zones are based on geography and on social economic factors. For example, what's the average income per capita in that area, and also what's the unemployment rate. It's an incentive program that the SBA does, the federal government does, to help small businesses generate revenue and employment in those economically distressed areas called hub zones. The next one is women-owned small business, and they also have not only women-owned small business, but an economically disadvantaged women-owned small business certification. Those are two others. And then finally, service-disabled veteran-owned small business, SDV WOSB. And again, these are special certifications just for businesses that are owned by service-disabled veterans. Next slide. Okay, are you ready to do business with the federal government? First, does the government buy what you sell? The answer is probably yes. The government buys just about everything. You'd be surprised. But just because they buy your stuff, does that mean you're ready to serve as a contractor to the federal government? Do you have experience? Do you have sufficient cash flow to be able to pay for goods and services and employment, your employees, until you get paid from the government? So you have to have enough cash flow. Do you have that expertise? Do you have the capability? Do you have the capacity? These are all questions you want to answer before you get involved in government contracting. Next slide. Okay, let's talk about economic disadvantage. This applies to the women-owned certification if you're applying for the ED-WOSB, Economically Disadvantaged Women-Owned Small Business, or if you're applying for the 8A program, which is for economically and socially disadvantaged individuals, business owners. And for the 8A program, you have to be both economically and socially disadvantaged. Let's talk about economic disadvantage. First, you have to have a personal net worth of $850,000 or less. And there are a couple things that you can exclude from that number. Your personal net worth does exclude the equity in your business. It excludes the equity you have in your primary residence, and also the equity that you have invested in tax-sheltered savings, such as IRAs or 401ks. All those are subtracted from your net worth when calculating your eligibility as a economically disadvantaged small business. So the first one is net worth. The next one is AGI, adjusted gross income. It has to be $400,000 or less per year. And this is averaged over a 3-year period as opposed to the 5-year period, which is the small business size standards. But for economic disadvantage, it's averaged over 3 years. So theoretically, you could be just under $1.2 million in income for the last 3 years combined and still be considered economically disadvantaged for the federal government purposes. And finally, assets totaling $6.5 million or less. So For all our participants, if we knocked you out, if you don't qualify because you have more than $6.5 million in assets, or your net worth is over $850,000, not including your business, not including your tax sheltered IRAs or tax sheltered savings, or not including your primary residence or your business equity. If you're knocked out, you're not going to be eligible for these small business economically disadvantaged certifications. But that doesn't mean you still can't be a small business. You can. You're just not going to be economically disadvantaged small business owner. Next slide. Okay, for the 8A program, you have to be both economically and socially disadvantaged. For all the other small business programs, you just have to be a small business. For the women-owned, economically disadvantaged women-owned, you have to be economically disadvantaged. But for the 8A program, you're economically and socially disadvantaged. And due to a lawsuit that happened in August of 2023, being a member of a pre-designated group does not automatically qualify you as socially disadvantaged. You now must provide a preponderance of evidence, examples that you have been discriminated against for whatever reason. And it really doesn't matter what the reason is, but if you've been discriminated against for the same reason multiple times, and you can show that, that is step one, to show that you're socially disadvantaged. Step two is to show not only were you discriminated against, but it negatively affected your business. And it could be the growth of your business, could be the timing. You weren't able to get in to small business as soon as you otherwise would have if you weren't discriminated against. So there's a lot of latitude here to get you in for that program. But you do have to show that you were discriminated against and that it negatively hurt your business. It impacted you financially. Next slide. Also, again, this is only for the 8A program, which is for economically and socially disadvantaged business individuals. You must be in business for 2 years. For the other certifications, you do not. You could be a startup. But for the 8A program, you have to be in business for 2 years. However, there is a waiver. You can request a waiver for this if you meet these 5 criteria. You have management experience, you have the technical expertise, you have sufficient capital to run your business, successfully past performance, you've already done the work, maybe not on your own. Maybe you did it as an employee, not as your own business owner, but you, for example, you're a project manager or a construction superintendent for a construction company. You don't have to own your own company for 2 years. If you've had all these management experiences and successful past performance, you're likely to get the waiver approved. And again, ability to meet the requirements. You still have to be able to show that you can do the work. Next slide. Okay, what are the benefits of being in the 8A program? Well, first, it allows you to compete for sole source and sole source set-aside contracts. When we say compete, the contracting officer can award you that contract. Non-compete, sole source. You're not competing against any other 8A firms. You're not bidding against them. But you still will have to submit a bid and make sure you're competitive, and that number is competing with the IGE, or initial government estimate, the budget that the government has set for that contract. But if you're in the 8A program, you work directly with the BOS, which is my title, Business Opportunity Specialist. So there's a business opportunity specialist assigned to every SBA office, or sometimes multiple, depending on how big that office territory is and what's the density of businesses within that area. You can also form joint ventures as an 8A contractor, and that helps you be able to compete for larger contracts than you otherwise might not be qualified for on your own. And finally, receive management and technical assistance. We do a lot of training online. Every SBA office does this, provide a lot of training directly from us and through our service provider partners to help businesses learn how to compete and grow. And we'll talk more about service partners a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide. Okay, when should you apply for the 8A program? Similar to the slide previously, do you have the capacity? Do you have the cash flow? Have you demonstrated capability? Do you already have past performance? Are you willing to listen to advice and maybe do things a little bit differently than in the past to grow your business? These are all questions you have to ask yourself before you apply. And I'm going to also add one more caveat that's not on this slide. The 8A program is only for 9 years. You're only eligible for the program for 9 years. So you don't want to get into the program and then figure out how to do business with the federal government. Many firms will spend 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes their entire term, and never get a contract because they don't know how to do business with the federal government. Learn how to do business with the federal government before you apply for the 8A program. It doesn't mean you're not eligible, but don't waste your years of eligibility trying to figure out the government system. It can be complex. It can be hard to learn. But once you learn how to do business with the federal government, most agencies do things very similarly. The process is similar. The paperwork is similar. So once you learn how to do it, it's not that hard to do. You just have to learn the rules and learn how to do it. So that's why for the 8A program, do business with the federal government first, even if it's not as a prime contractor, even if it's a subcontractor. Work with other contractors that are already doing business with the federal government. Get on base, get onto military installations or whatever government installations are in the territory where you want to work. Work there. Learn the process. Build some relationships. If you already have a relationship with a contracting officer or a program manager or a project superintendent because you worked as a subcontractor for someone else, you can go into that office and say, hey, I worked on this project. You can come by and look at my work anytime you want. Here's the timeline of when we're going to be there, what we're working on, and invite them to come take a look. And then when you're done, you can go back and say, okay, we did this project. Now, I did this as a subcontractor, but now I have the 8A certification, and I would love to work for you as a prime contractor. Once you've built that relationship already, you're more likely to get contracts as a prime contractor. So that's why I say don't rush and get your 8A certification right away. Wait till you know how to do business with the federal government. That way you're not wasting your eligibility years. Next slide.
Yo.
Okay, begin with certified at SBA.gov.
I'm in the office, not worrying
That's
about
the
it.
government contracting program that the SBA uses. So register there before you even try to apply for any certifications.
Let me get back with you. I'm on a webinar right now. I'm recording it, so.
Remember I talked about resources and assistance,
Yeah,
service provider partners that can help you through the program? That's what we'll talk about now. Next slide. Okay. If you go to sba.gov/local-assistance, you can find out all the different service providers who are in your area. And we'll talk about that, a couple of them in the Fresno area in the future slides. Next slide. Okay, you can use the QR scanner from your phone if you want to find out which resource partners are right for you. Or again, you can look at the sba.gov website. Next slide. Okay, we'll help you if you're in the Fresno territory. We'll help you find the right resource partner for you in these future slides. The first one is SCORE. Stands for Senior Corps of Retired Executives. And for Fresno, Madera, Kings, and Tulare counties, here's the contact information. There's no cost for most of the workshops that they do. Most are free online, and usually online. Sometimes they're in person, but usually online. Next slide. Okay, small business development centers. There's multiple in the Fresno SBA territory because we cover 15 counties. The closest one to our district office is right here on the screen in Clovis. That's the first one. Next slide. Okay, here's another one, CSU Bakersfield. SBDC, or Small Business Development Center in Bakersfield. Here's their contact information. And by the way, if you don't get everything down from these slides, all you have to do is go to the fresno@sba.gov. Send an email, and we could send more information out to you. Not the entire presentation, but we can get you answers to any questions that you have and let you know who the local service provider is in your area. Next slide. Okay, women's business centers. We have several women's business centers in our territory that also help. And by the way, all these service provider partners are available to you at no cost to you. You just register on their website as a client, and they'll be glad to help you out. And by the way, the Women's Business Center, you do not have to be a woman-owned small business to get help from the Women's Business Center. They will help you whether you're a woman-owned small business or not. That's just, they are here to help. Next slide. Okay, here's another one in Bakersfield, Women's Business Center. The previous one was in Clovis. Next slide. Okay, we talked about women's business centers, SBDC, SCORE. Here's another resource partner called the Veterans Business Outreach Center, VBOC. And this is the information right out of Clovis. And even though it's a 916 phone number, that will put you through to Clovis. Next slide. Okay, for government contracting, all the other service partners will provide you help with just about anything you want, whether it's government contracting, whether it's accounting, whether it's HR, personnel, just general business consulting, starting a business plan. All those other service provider partners are there to help you with general business counseling. This one, the Apex Accelerator /PTAC, they changed the names sometime last year. It used to be called PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center. Now they changed the name to Apex Accelerator. But what they do, again, it costs you nothing for help. Register on the website as a client and they'll serve you. But they provide government contracting expertise. And that's both federal and state contracting. And they'll even help you with county or local government contracting. They're government contracting experts. Here's the information for the one out of Monterey Bay that covers the majority of the 15 county Fresno territories. Next slide. Here's the Golden State Apex Accelerator contact information. They're going to cover Kings County and Kern and SLO, San Luis Obispo and Kern County. So that's at the very southern edge of the Fresno territory. But there's Angela's information. Next slide. Okay, export work. If you want to do exporting, we have an export assistance center right in the Fresno district office location. It's manned by the Department of Commerce or Department of Trade. And that's right here, and here's their contact information. Next slide. Okay, we talked a little bit earlier about 7J Technical Assistance Program. Again, this is if you're looking for online help for your business in addition to all the other service provider partners, there's 7J online training. And you can scan that QR code or go to the SBA.gov website, click on 7J training, and they have all kinds of classes available online for you to help that you can be scheduled to join. Next slide. Okay. Helpful resources. Of course, your SBA local office. We are the Fresno office. We cover the 15 counties in Central Valley of California. But I know there's some people from out of state on this. Every state has their own SBA.gov district office. I shouldn't say .gov. SBA office to help you. So you can just SBA.gov and look for the office that's closest to you. They do have them there. If you have 8A questions, you can send them to your resource partners. You can send them to your district office, or you can go directly to 8A questions at SBA.gov, and they can answer them directly. Eligibility questions, here's a couple different phone numbers. These are for the district, I'm sorry, the certification eligibility office phone numbers, where they have specific questions about eligibility, specific expertise. And finally, on certified.sba.gov, at the bottom, there's a link called Certified Knowledge Base, and it gives you lots of tools and information about all the different certifications that we talked about. The 8A, the business development, the mentor protege program, women-owned small business certification, and HUBZone certification. It's all centralized through certify.sba.gov. Next slide. Okay, again, take a photo or scan this QR code. We'll leave it up here for a few more seconds, but everybody's got a phone now. And we'll go on to the next slide. This is a slide to get the resource guide. The resource guide is a 32-page manual that's broken out into 3 primary sections. Government contracting is one. Access to capital or SBA lending is a second general category. And the third category is counseling or training if you're looking for help. So those are the 3 areas: counseling, access to capital, and government contracting. And that's how the resource guide is broken out. And it's good information, and again, it's online. Next slide. This is just the same information in Spanish. And by the way, we are giving the same presentation a week from today in Spanish, but it's going to be in person only, not online. But it's going to be in person at the Fresno District Office, 801 R Street, Fresno, California, 2nd floor, Suite 201. Next slide. Okay, here's our contact information. I'm at the top, Thomas Shai. I'm the Business Opportunity Specialist. George Flores, who's also on this presentation and has been answering all the online questions, is our Deputy District Director, and Israel Lara is a government contracting specialist also. And so these are 3 people that you get help from right here in the district office. And again, if you have questions, email it to fresno@sba.gov. Next slide. All right, we're ready for questions. Let's open it up and see what we have.
Hi, Tom. This is George. I pretty much answered all the questions that have been in the chat so far. So we'll just wait to see if there's any new ones.
Great. Thank you, George. No questions. Does that mean it was such a good presentation that I answered everybody's questions before they were asked? Or does it just mean, George, you did such a good job at answering online questions?
There's a question right there. Can you see it, Tom?
No. What's the question, George? Could you read it, please?
Yeah. Can you form a new company specifically to apply?
Yes, you can. You can form a new company and apply it. You do want to form the company first, whatever it is, and it could be sole proprietor, but it's more difficult to get the certification and then change. So you really don't want to change your business structure unless you have to, and you can, but it's much better to get the business structure that you want and then apply for the certification. The only exception to that is for the 8A business development program. For that one, again, you need to have 2 years experience. So form the company first. And if you don't have 2 years experience, then you can apply for a waiver. But again, you don't want to get in the 8A program unless you have experience and you're likely to get government contracts right away. You want to know how to do business before you get in the 8A program. And not just do business, but you want to know how to earn government contracts, how to do business with the federal government before you get in, because you only have 9 years of eligibility. So hopefully that answers the question.
Great, Tom. Thank you. There is another one. It was mentioned that it is important to gain experience with government first before applying to 8A. Any recommendations on how to get into the door to speak to government business to gain the experience?
Yes, great question. Well, first, Google's always good. You can always Google to find out who the decision makers are, who are the contracting people at the different locations that you're looking for. You can go to a lot of online resources to see who the players are. But just finding out who those players are doesn't mean you're going to be able to get access to them. You can try, you can call, you can email, you can try to get in, but a lot of times you can't just walk into a government facility, especially if it's a military base. You might have to have a clearance. You might just have to have special, even if it's not a secret clearance or anything like that, but you still have to have base access privileges. So what I would recommend, if you've done everything you can to try to get in, and you can't find out any of these resources that'll get you through. Well, first, our service provider partners, the Apex accelerators. They are the government contracting expertise that helps us provide services to all our small businesses. So you can go to them, register on their website as a client, and ask them for help, ask them for guidance, and they'll help provide that. Another thing is, and I'm going to just use construction as an example, but it really doesn't matter what businesses you provide, business or service. If you don't know how to get in as a prime contractor, work as a subcontractor. Again, find out who, you can go through PTAC to help learn this, but who are the contractors that are already on base, who are already providing goods and services to that government contract, that government office. Find out who the contractors are and be a subcontractor for them. They're already in. Now you don't have to do any of the paperwork of getting contracting from the federal government. You just have to convince this contractor that you're good to work with, that they want to subcontract to you. And a lot of small business contractors that work directly for the government hire subcontractors because they don't have enough people. They don't have enough resources to do all the work on their own. So work as a subcontractor first, and that's a great way to learn how to get government experience as a subcontractor. Any other questions?
Doesn't look like there's any more at this time, Tom.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, if you have questions, Fresno@sba.gov, and we'll be glad to answer your questions.